Good morning on this Thursday. The next 3 days, I'm going to most likely be on early. We're going to be in Fargo for the Pride of Dakota show. You can see on the wall behind me that I got all of the totes are down. I mean, that's what's in those black bags up there, my stuff that I've got made and ready for the show. So I'll be on early, especially tomorrow and Saturday, Sunday morning. It might be somewhere pretty close to 9 o'clock. And for those that tune in on my YouTube channel, I probably won't get anything uploaded to YouTube for Friday, Saturday and Sunday until Sunday evening. So thanks for bearing with on those things. Today we look at Hebrews chapter 11, verses 20 through 40. And this continues this writer's statements of people of faith. And whoever wrote this book is very familiar with the Hebrew scriptures and history. And, you know, the genealogy and history was very important to these Jewish people to trace their ancestry back. And, you know, you remember when, you know, when they were talking with Jesus, you know, we're descendants of Abraham, you know, and I mean, they knew. I mean, they could track their genealogy all the way back, and that's as we track Jesus' genealogy, you know, in especially in Matthew. I guess Luke tracks it pretty well too. But you know, they know who they are, and so for this writer of Hebrews, knows the history, and he knows the genealogies, and he knows the stories of faith, and he's recounting them for these new believers now, these new believers in Jesus Christ, because he's showing how, you know, it's faith. And when he talks about Moses in here, you know, he talks about Moses waiting for the Christ. And I mean, Jesus didn't come for an awful lot of generations after Moses. But in verse 17 again, by faith, we got 17 we looked at yesterday, talking about Abraham's faith. Verse 20 starts, but by faith Isaac invoked the blessing for the future of Jacob and Esau. And that's another story where, you know, Esau should have gotten the blessing, but Jacob stole the blessing from his brother Esau, because Esau was the elder by just a little bit. But yet it's through Jacob, you know, this one who stole the blessing, that the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Jacob become the 12 tribes of Israel. And, you know, so that, you know, it's all traced in there. But Jacob, or Isaac rather, the father of Jacob and Esau, had faith in God. He trusted in God to be what he should be, or to be who he should be. And then by faith, Jacob, when dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph. And Joseph was the youngest of the sons, and who had been sold. And it was just, you know, but this, you know, this Jacob, the grandpa, blessed the sons, his grandsons. And he did it because of faith, you know, and it says bowing in worship over the top of his staff. And then Joseph, again, the genealogies coming down, you know, it's Isaac to Jacob, to Joseph, and to Joseph's sons, and then Joseph at the end of that, giving instructions for his burial. And then we come, by faith, Moses was hidden by his parents for 3 months. I mean, it was illegal for these Israelite women to have a child, especially a male child, because they were all to be put to death. But they hid this baby Moses for 3 months. And then, of course, I mean, hopefully you know the story. They put him in this reed basket, and Pharaoh's daughter found him, of course. But it goes through here. And by faith, Moses didn't grab onto this being of the Pharaoh's daughter. He held on to his Israelite roots, his Jewish roots. And as you know, in the story of Moses, you know, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, and he stepped in and took some extreme measures, and Moses had to flee for his life. But 40 years later, as God called Moses back, by faith, Moses listened to God, and he came and he led the people out of Israel. And, you know, and And, so we've got a few verses here talking about Moses' faith. Verse 28, by faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood. And, someone who was raised by Pharaoh's daughter in an Egyptian household, you wouldn't think that they would even know of the Passover and of all that. But somehow, even when he was basically adopted at that 3 months of age, Moses knew his roots. And of course, Pharaoh's daughter had rescued him out of the basket, but had entrusted Moses' care to Moses' mother. I mean, what a funny situation, I mean, they're not supposed to have these Israelite babies, or, these men, boy babies anyway. Pharaoh's daughter finds him, and then, and his mother, steps up to say, hey, I can take care of that baby for you and raise him for you. And, it happens. But it's faith that, these people have in God. And it's the trust that things are going to be okay. And then, we get to be talking about Moses a little bit later. By faith, the people of Israel passed through the Red Sea as if it was dry land. Think about, we know that story too, how Moses, God said, Moses, hold your, and the staff, and the waters would part. And think about that, how you got this Red Sea ahead of you, and all of a sudden the waters separate, and you start going across there. And think of the terror that would be, of course you got the Egyptians in their chariots coming behind, and you got no other way to go. But it's by faith that these people went through that Red Sea that was split open. But yet when the Egyptians came, it says, of course they were drowned. By faith the walls of Jericho fell. And that's another tremendous story, how, they were attacking this city, a very, very well fortified city, a city with a lot of armed power in there. And they did what God said. They marched around the walls, blowing their trumpets for 7 days. You should read that story if you haven't. But it's great because, they listened to what God said. And what God said would happen, the walls would fall down. They did, And so by faith, they listened. And then by faith, Rahab the prostitute. There's another outsider who has heard the word of God, who hides these Israelite spies and lets them down over the outside wall so that they can escape. But it's by her faith in God and her belief in God that then when the Israelites came back, she and her family were spared, and then starting at verse 32, he says, and what more should I say? And then he lists this whole line of people: Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, the prophets, all of these names of famous, well-known peoples of faith in their history that he brings forward to remind the people how these people had faith and how God was faithful in return to them. How they quenched the fire, they scraped the edge of the sword, they won out of weakness, they became mighty in war, and all of what God did for God's people. So it's just that reminder that we have these examples of faith, and I think about the people in my life who have been examples of faith to me, pillars of the faith community. And I could have a list of a lot of names of people who have influenced me in my faith, in my life of faith in God and in what I do. And we listen, we learn from those people by example that way. And so the very last couple of verses, yet all of these, though they were commended for their faith, did not receive what was promised. They didn't see the Messiah. They've been waiting and watching for the Messiah for centuries. And now we have finally seen the Messiah. And as we get into chapter 12 tomorrow, it's going to talk a little bit more about that and how, because of the witnesses and the faith of those who have gone before us, that we can be assured that God will be faithful in his promises to us. So blessings today. And again, The next couple of days, don't know for sure what time I'll be on. Sunday morning, there will not be worship in Sutton or in McHenry. But as I said, I'll do a devotion on Sunday morning, like I always do. So see ya on the line.